Good morning, everyone, and happy Valentine's Eve Day, Thursday, February 13th. Welcome to this webinar on Phishing 101, how to protect you, your company, and your employees from email attacks. My name is Paul Mueller, and I want to welcome you to this presentation. Here's a little bit about me. I've been practicing as a CPA since November of 1978. I'm the managing director of Mueller, Pye & Associates CPA. Perhaps the most important item on this particular slide is the last bullet item, is that I am not an IT professional. And so when it comes to matters of IT infrastructure security and other types of items unique to your particular network, I would certainly encourage you to consult with your IT consultant or IT team with regard to some of the information we'll talk about today. We're broadcasting this webinar from our main office in Loveland, Colorado, and when you live in a community named Loveland, the Valentine's Day weekend is a very special occurrence here in what we refer to as the Sweetheart City of the USA. And starting Friday afternoon, Valentine's Day, we'll have some activities kicking off, including a mass wedding and renewal of vows in our downtown plaza. Activities going on through Saturday night with lots of events, pageants, bands, just a lot of great entertainment here in Loveland, Colorado. So let's get to our program today. We're going to talk about email attacks. Email has become an essential business communication tool, but it's also become the preferred gateway for people that want to try to penetrate networks, steal information, steal identities, to try to seek financial gain in that area. And so the purpose of this presentation today is to share with you, since we're a CPA firm and we have a lot of client records, what we are doing to try to protect ourselves and protect you from these types of attacks. And hopefully we can all work together to protect each other in that regard. Before we get started on that, there's some common terms that I think we ought to understand. We'll be using some of these words in today's presentation. The title of this program was Phishing 101. Phishing refers to the use of phony emails that look like legitimate emails to try to get you to click a link or take some kind of action that then allows an attacker to invade your email platform, perhaps your infrastructure system, your network, and then have free reign through your confidential information. These attackers do that by a tactic called social engineering, which is a fancy term for the tips and the tricks and the language that the attackers use to try to induce you to overreact, perhaps panic, and maybe do something that you ordinarily wouldn't do if you had time to think it through. The purpose of some of these phishing attacks is to install malware on your computer, which allows the attacker then to penetrate your systems and bypass some of your security protocols. And then finally, what we've probably heard of the most, and that's ransomware, which is a form of malware, which is a particularly vicious type of malware that typically locks users out of their system and requires a payment of some kind of ransom for you to be able to get your system restored. That ransom is usually paid by some form of virtual currency like Bitcoin. So we do see those quite a bit. The challenge that we have is that 91% of all cyber attacks start with an email by someone clicking a link, either an embedded link or an attachment that then unleashes this malware or allows the attacker to get into systems and begin to steal personal, confidential, identity type information. So when we hear on the news about a company being attacked or having a cyber attack or a data breach or whatever, more than 9 times out of 10, that attack originated through some form of an email. And we're going to share with you some of the emails that we've seen where these attacks originate from. There's some recent statistics about the prevalence of phishing attacks. Phishing grew by more than 40% in 2018 and continues to be on the rise, particularly as attackers get more creative in creating successful forms of attacks. Interestingly, though, 98% of the attacks of email inboxes did not contain malware. Uh, Malware is sophisticated and it's expensive to deploy. And in a lot of cases, the hackers are trying to steal just your information, your address book, your contact list, and they're satisfied with getting that information. Also, more than 80% of the attacks are targeted against 5 specific industries, which include financial services, email platforms, cloud-based software and server-based programs, payment and merchant processing, those would be the credit card systems, and then the software subscription services seem to be a popular target for hackers. And as a CPA firm, we fall into that financial services area, and so we are one of the targeted industries for these phishing attacks, which makes it incumbent on us to be careful and be careful about how we manage our particular email. Now, we think of these cyber attacks as happening to really large companies. We hear about it on the news. It could be some hospital systems. It can be some banks, some retail outlets. Certainly, a lot of those have been really popular in the news. But I listed here some recent local attacks that occurred in the northern Colorado area just in the last 12 months. We had a local water utility, the Fort Collins Loveland Water District, that was a victim of a malware attack just 1 year ago in February of 2019. The Estes Park Health System, the entity that runs the medical center and ancillary services in the Estes Park community, was hit with a ransomware attack in June of 2019. Through consultation with their insurance carrier and law enforcement, they decided to pay the ransomware in that case because they had no access to their emergency medical records system. And so you can understand the impact that would have on patient care and delivery of services. And so they did pay a $10,000 ransom, which was their deductible on the insurance policy. What we don't know is what the insurance company paid for their portion of that particular ransomware payment. Just last fall in September, Colorado Timberline, a printing company in Denver, was hit with a ransomware attack apparently so prevalent and so severe that the company closed its doors and went bankrupt and laid off all of its employees. And so we don't know that to the extent of what that severity was, but apparently they felt like they had no other option than to go out of business. And then more recently, just a month ago, in the town of Erie, a relatively small community in northern Colorado. This was not necessarily a phishing attack, but they had an online payment portal for their vendors and contractors to submit their invoices and then receive payment. They had someone go onto that system and pretend to be one of their construction contractors for a large road building project and convince the town to stop sending checks to the contractor, but instead start making wire transfers to that contractor. It wound up that actually that it was a fake person impersonating that company, and there was over $1 million of payments made to this fictitious vendor that the town is still considering its options on how to recover that money and whether there'll be any insurance reimbursement for that particular attack. So with that as a little bit of a background, let's take a look at some of the more common types of emails. And I'll bet you that everybody listening to this webinar, you are going to see at least one email in this series of screenshots that I'm going to share with you that you have potentially been a target and hopefully not a victim of some of these email attacks. So let's take a look. This is perhaps the most infamous phishing email attack in history. If we go back to 2016 and in the presidential election, as the election was nearing its completion, you might recall there was a lot of news and stories about Hillary Clinton's emails being disclosed by Julian Assange and WikiLeaks. And the email that you're looking at is the email that triggered that entire release of emails. This was an email sent to John Podesta, who was the campaign manager for Hillary Clinton, and he received this email, and you can see up there in the red, it says someone has your password and someone is trying to sign into your Google account, and you should change your password immediately, you know, trying to create a sense of panic and concern and overreaction in this particular case. Now, John did exactly what we tell so many people to do when you receive these types of emails. He called his IT consulting group. with the Hillary Clinton campaign. The IT folks came in, they reviewed this email, they decided that it appeared to be a credible threat, and they told John that he needed to change his password on his Gmail account. So if John had deleted this email and gone to his Gmail account and changed his settings there, everything would have been fine. But John misunderstood what he was being told by the IT people, and he in fact clicked on that blue box where it says change password. Well, as you can imagine, that took him to a fake site that kind of sort of looked like Gmail, and he went in there and entered his login credentials and changed his password and all of that. And of course, that gave hackers free reign to all of his login information for Gmail. And as they say, the rest is history. This is a phishing email designed to look like a file sharing email, and it's supposedly from Dropbox. In fact, right there in the middle of the email is the Dropbox logo. It could look like a very legitimate email that somebody is sending you a document for you to download on your end. If you look up there at the top, the email address for the sender, where it's coming from, it says support@drp-box.com. If you check right now to see what that internet or that URL leads you to, you'll see that it has nothing to do with Dropbox. And so this is a hacker trying to get you to click on one of these links. They're telling you it's an important document. It's from someone from your address book, and that phrase, someone from your address book, that in and of itself should be a tip-off that this is probably a fake email. But again, these things do work. Here's an email that preys on people's fears, privacy, and secrecy. This is referred to as a sexploitation phishing email. Here, the hacker is telling you that they have you on video. They know that you visited an adult site. They were able to tap into the camera on your computer and actually have a video of you watching these adult sites. And so you can imagine someone who might engage in this kind of activity, the sort of panic that this sort of email would instill in them, and how they might overreact and panic and click on a link that they shouldn't to try to make this go away. This is an interesting email here, a gift card scam, and in fact, we were a recipient of this email in the fall of 2019. One of our associates received this email in our Texas office, and it appeared that the email came from me, saying that we needed to get these gift cards as soon as possible. Could you run to the store, get those, send me the information on how to redeem those gift cards so we can get them out. And the only reason I knew that it happened was I was in a board meeting that morning, and all of a sudden my phone began to blow up with a bunch of text messages from this associate that said something like they were at the doctor's office, and as soon as they got done there, they would run to the store immediately and get this taken care of and let me know. Well, of course, I'm sitting in this board meeting and I'm like, what the heck is this about? I have no idea what this means. And so I did step out of the meeting, had a phone call with that associate, and we discovered that it was pretty much this email, pretty much word for what you're seeing here, that appeared to come from me, but was not from me, trying to get this associate in our firm to go buy these gift cards and turn that information over to a hacker. I will tell you there are security software items that you can put into your email platform that prohibits these types of what they refer to as ghosted emails from being circulated. And again, I would direct you to consult with your IT consultant or professional about how you can stop these kinds of fake ghosting emails circulating in your particular office. This is an email that appears to come from a trusted individual asking, in this case, some direct deposit information on payroll. I referred earlier to the Estes Park Health Group being hit with a ransomware attack last summer. About 3 or 4 years ago, they had a similar attack as to what you're looking at here, where the payroll clerk with the hospital system received a fake email, supposedly from the CEO of the hospital, saying that he needed an updated employee roster, payroll information for an upcoming board meeting. The payroll clerk thought that it was a legitimate request from the CEO and sent him that information, which contained employee names, addresses, social security numbers, pay rates, health insurance, just a lot of personal confidential information, including direct deposit. And it really did create quite a problem with the employees and a lot of hassles with accounts having to be closed and changed. And so when you know, with this type of an email, you have to stop for a second and think, why would the CEO be asking for this information through an email when they could pick up the phone? And sometimes in this situation, maybe it's best for you as the recipient to pick up the phone and call the sender, just to make sure this is a valid request and that you understand that it's actually the information, the person asking for this information. This is an example of phishing using text. For this reason, we try to discourage communicating with our clients through text because it's even more unsecure than using email. And so it's just an area that it's better to avoid a problem than have to fix a problem. And then the classic kind of email scheme where there's a fake invoice attached, and in this case, it's somebody at a company sending an invoice supposedly to an employee in their business to revise the attached invoice. So they're trying to get you to click on that link down there, which will usually launch some kind of malware attack. Again, just take a minute to call that particular person to say, was that really you? Did you really send this request? Just so you know exactly who you are dealing with. This is one of those situations where we encourage people, as fast as we are trying to clear our inboxes and handle all this volume of email, there are times when you have to take 4 steps and stop, look, think, and delete. If you happen to delete a legitimate email, that person is going to come back to you at some point with that additional request. So it rarely hurts to delete an email in the interest of protection and safety. So those are some examples of how these attacks originate and what they look like. I want to share with you what I believe are some things to think about in terms of solutions and avoiding these kinds of problems. And it's important to remember that we're all in this together because it's our identity and our data that we're trying to protect, each of us, from these types of attacks. And so how we communicate and how we share all that information makes all the difference in the world. So let's talk about that just a little bit. There's really 3 steps to the solution, and one is the education process, which I hope through the last several emails of showing those sample email schemes, you've got a feel for what some of those attacks can look like and how to spot those. We'll talk about that a little more in just a minute. And then also communicate. How do we communicate each other? What are the proper types of channels that we do and do not communicate among ourselves? And let's make sure we're trying to keep those channels as narrow and as efficient as possible. And then finally, the emulation process of understanding some of those best practices and how can we replicate those best practices across all of our email platforms. So again, we're protecting each other from these types of attacks. So for the first off, the educating, how to spot those red flags. If you noticed with some of those emails that I sent you, there were some common red flags that were evident in those emails. Did the email address look legitimate? Oftentimes, like with the ghosted gift card email, if you hover over the sender's name in that email address, it'll pop up as to what that underlying email address is. And that should tip you off as to whether the email is really coming from that person or from some other source. The to address, does it look correct? Is it spelled right? Are there people CC'd, like undisclosed recipients and others that, why would those people be CC'd on the message? Spelling is a really big item on these red flags, and that goes to the next item about the message body. If you see some spelling errors, if you see some misuse of punctuation, of fonts, of grammar, the syntax just doesn't sound like proper English, those are tip-offs that perhaps it's somebody overseas that's originating this attack, and maybe they don't have as quite a grasp on the English language that you may have as the reader of that particular email. And then those button and links. It's just a good idea with any sort of links, attachments, buttons, any kind of embedded material. is not to click on those kinds of items. There are some free resources out there. Know Before Inc. has a great handout for what they call the 22 red flags to watch for emails, and we'll look at that in just a second. But this is the email address where you can actually download a PDF of that 22 red flag document. And if you want to, you can distribute that to your employees or use it in a staff meeting to help educate your team as to what these attacks might look like. Also, the IRS has a great Identity Theft Central, a great resource page on their website. I've got the address here. The IRS, probably of any government agency, has been the most aggressive in protecting identity and really trying to protect the integrity of our tax collection system. And so they have been very active in this whole anti-phishing and identity theft safety program of anybody. Here's what that 22 red flags document looks like. I understand on this particular screenshot, some of this is going to be a little bit hard for you to read. I just wanted to show you an example of what it looked like. And so I would really encourage you to go out, download that particular PDF, and get this information out to your team. This could really help educate your team in terms of how to avoid becoming a victim to some of these schemes. Again, communication is key, the types of channels that we use, and I'll just share with you a little bit of what we do and how we communicate with our clients, both inbound and outbound communications. We use ShareFile. That's a Citrix product that allows us to securely send and allow our clients to securely transmit data to us. And you think about us as a CPA firm. We're into busy season now. We've got folks sending us all kinds of tax information, and much of that tax information contains sensitive information like Social Security numbers. And so we just discourage having those documents sent to us in an unsecure email platform, and we certainly do not send that information out except through a secure portal like ShareFile. We accept requests via telephone. We'll have folks that'll call us and ask us for a copy of their tax return or a tax document. We do go through some verification checks when we're with that person on the phone so that we know who we're talking to. I'm not going to tell you what we asked for or how we obtain that verification, but we do want to make sure we know who we are talking to on the phone before we send a document. We do not share tax return information with a third party without advance signed consent of a taxpayer. In fact, federal law prohibits us from sharing tax return information with a third party without taxpayer consent, signed consent. We do not accept requests via email without picking up the phone and making sure, again, we understand the source of that email, and in fact, it was the client asking for us to send information to them. And then internally, we use Microsoft Teams to communicate among ourselves. Microsoft Teams you may have heard of Slack, which is another type of internal communication tool. It allows us to communicate among our team in a secure internal environment, because much of that communication does involve client information and client data. We keep that out of our email platforms, and the side benefit is it greatly diminishes the amount of activity in your inbox. I would say if you're using Outlook as your email platform or you're a Microsoft user, you ought to look into Microsoft Teams. There's a very good chance you're already paying for that particular service, that particular software, and probably with 30 to 45 minutes of training with you and your team, y'all could be up and running on Microsoft Teams and using that to communicate among yourselves, basically in a chat type of format. There are ways we will not communicate with our clients. Like I said earlier, we don't ask for sensitive information over unsecured email. In fact, we discourage that and prefer that our clients send us information in using that ShareFile platform. We do not accept file sharing links other than through our ShareFile portal. So there's just so many of these file sharing platforms out there like Google Drive, Dropbox, and many others that for us to try to figure out what's a legitimate email versus an illegitimate email, we just don't accept links, file sharing links, except by using our particular ShareFile platform. And we will not share sensitive information with employees of your company that we do not already know are authorized to have that information. So again, we need to know who we are communicating with on the other end. So then, what are some of the best practices that we can all sort of share among each other to protect us as a group? What we ask is that you use our secure communication channels. We will have clients that'll send us documents through regular email, and we will accept that information. But at the same time, we will ask them that going forward to use those secure links. We ask that you don't get frustrated when we enforce our security procedures, because it is all about you. We are protecting you and your identity, and we understand you need a copy of that tax return to get your mortgage refinance done or take care of some other financial transaction. We understand the importance of speed, but we also understand the importance of security. And then we ask that you train your staff to communicate securely as well, because it only takes that one employee that one time to click that one link to create all kinds of problems. So first of all, I want to thank you all for attending this morning's program, and I hope that you've gotten some information out of this particular presentation, and maybe you have a better appreciation for how phishing can cause a security breach. And I just remind you again that that four-step process, when you do get these emails, stop, look, think, delete. That's that's always the safest course to go if you're not really sure about the email that you've received. It's important to make sure your employees know that they have an important role here in protecting themselves, your customers, and your business as well. And understand that the communication tools and strategies that we've talked about, that I've shared in this particular program, are designed to protect you, and it is your identity at stake. So I thank you for attending this program. We will check our Q&A to see if any questions have come in during this program. And we do have one question. When you have a unsubscribe link in an email, is it safe to click that particular link to unsubscribe? That's a really great question. Most email platforms, like newsletters, and in fact, we use Constant Contact to send out our tax alerts. Those programs always have a link at the bottom where you can unsubscribe off of those. I would say for a well-known mainstream type company, that those unsubscribe links are probably safe. Not so sure that that's true across the board. And in fact, you don't necessarily have to click that link. You can contact the sender directly and ask them to unsubscribe you off your list. And so that would certainly eliminate the exposure of clicking through that particular link. That looks like the only question that we have. And once again, I want to thank you for taking time this morning to listen to this presentation. We have been recording this particular presentation, and we will get this out as a resource. Feel free to share this particular presentation with your team. And if there's anything we can do to provide further information or answer questions, we are readily available. You all have a happy Valentine's Day. Have a great weekend, and we will look forward to meeting again. Thank you.